The mid-morning sunlight spilled through the wide cafe windows, catching the steam rising from dozens of cups, a soft hum of chatter filling the air. It was one of those ordinary weekday mornings that no one expects to change their life, until it does. Ethan Cole had just finished wiping the flour from his hands after dropping his daughter off at preschool and stopping at the Morning Haven, a cozy coffee shop near downtown. He looked worn but handsome in a quiet, lived-in way, rolled-up sleeves of a faded denim shirt, hair tousled, eyes carrying both exhaustion and kindness. He wasn't rich, but he carried himself with the dignity of a man who had weathered storms and still believed in doing good. Across the room, a woman stood in line, elegant, reserved, wearing a soft cream coat and a silk scarf, her hair pulled into a sleek ponytail. Her name was Aurelia Voss. Few in that room would have recognized her as one of the most powerful entrepreneurs in the country. A billionaire philanthropist who preferred simplicity when she escaped her corporate world. Today, she wanted nothing more than a quiet cup of coffee and a moment away from cameras, titles, and obligations. But fate rarely offers peace when something bigger is meant to happen. The argument started suddenly. A well-dressed man at the counter raised his voice, mocking the barista for getting his order wrong. Then, when Aurelia stepped in softly, asking him to calm down, he turned his cruelty toward her. His voice was sharp, dripping with entitlement, and the cafe grew quiet as his insults echoed. "You think you can tell me what to do?" he sneered. "You're just another woman trying to act important." The barista froze, eyes wide, and then, in that tense silence, Ethan stepped forward. He didn't shout. He didn't posture. He just placed himself between the man and Aurelia, his voice calm but firm. The tone of someone who had faced worse storms in life and learned where to draw the line. "You don't talk to anyone like that," he said, his eyes steady. "Apologize and walk away." The aggressor scoffed, but something in Ethan's unflinching stare made him hesitate, mumble a curse, and leave in embarrassment. The cafe exhaled. Aurelia stood there stunned, not just by his courage but by the quiet grace with which he carried it. If you believe that kindness and second chances can change lives, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Journal, where true hearts and real stories remind us of what goodness looks like. When Ethan turned back, he simply smiled, apologizing for the scene as if he had done something minor. "Some people just need to be reminded to be human," he said softly before walking back to his corner table. Aurelia watched him, curious. Something about his humility struck her. She ordered her drink, then found herself sitting at the table next to his. For the next few minutes, she observed him discreetly, his old laptop open, a stack of bills beside it, and a worn leather notebook filled with sketches and notes. He looked like a man juggling too much, yet he carried a calm that came from acceptance, not defeat. She noticed a child's crayon drawing tucked into his notebook, a stick figure of a man and little girl holding hands under a rainbow. The drawing was labeled in shaky handwriting, "Me and Daddy." Aurelia couldn't help but speak. She thanked him for stepping in, her voice warm and sincere. Ethan shrugged lightly. "It's nothing. People just forget how to treat others sometimes." She smiled faintly. "Still, it takes courage to stand up when everyone else stays quiet." He smiled back, but there was sadness behind it. Courage doesn't pay the rent. Though, they talked for a while. Aurelia learned that Ethan was a single father to a 5-year-old girl named Leela. He had once worked as a construction foreman until an injury forced him into lower-paying odd jobs. He had dreams of starting a small carpentry business, but he'd been rejected for loans multiple times. "They look at my bank account and see risk," he said. "They don't see effort." His words lingered in Aurelia's mind. Here was a man who didn't complain, who bore life's weight with quiet dignity. After that morning, Aurelia couldn't stop thinking about him. She came back to the same cafe the next day, and the day after. Each time Ethan was there, working on his laptop, searching for jobs, sketching designs for furniture he hoped to build one day. Slowly, they began to talk more. Their conversations were simple but deep, about parenthood, lost dreams, and how life sometimes tests good people the hardest. One morning, Leela joined him. Aurelia watched as the little girl climbed onto a chair, her hair in 2 uneven pigtails, her laughter like sunlight and sound. Ethan was so gentle with her, cutting her pancake, tying her shoe, wiping chocolate from her cheek with a napkin. Aurelia felt something warm stir inside her. She had everything: wealth, power, fame. but she realized she had never seen love so pure, so unfiltered, so beautiful. Weeks passed, they became friends, though Ethan never asked for anything from her. He had no idea who she truly was. To him, she was just Aurelia, a kind stranger who liked coffee and listened when few did. One day, when he admitted that he was thinking of giving up on his business idea, Aurelia leaned forward and said, "Don't give up. Sometimes the right door opens when you least expect it." He smiled but shook his head. "I've knocked on so many doors, they stopped opening." That night, Aurelia made a decision. She called her assistant and asked for details on a small grant program she had recently launched through her foundation, one that helped struggling single parents start small businesses. She didn't want to hand him money directly. It would hurt his pride. But she could give him a real chance. 2 weeks later, Ethan received an email saying he'd been selected for a Small Dreams Initiative grant, providing funding, mentorship, and workspace for his woodworking business. He was stunned, almost suspicious. "I didn't even apply," he told the cafe owner. But the email was real, the signature legitimate. The foundation wanted to help him build his dream. Tears burned behind his eyes as he realized, maybe, just maybe, life wasn't done being kind. Over the next months, his life began to change. He rented a small workshop, painted coal craftworks on the front, and started building custom furniture. Orders slowly came in, and with each project his confidence grew. He spent his evenings sketching, his weekends with Leela at the park, and every few days he met Aurelia at the cafe, grateful for her friendship and steady encouragement. Yet, he still didn't know she was the one behind his sudden luck. Then came the day of the foundation's annual gala, a televised event celebrating small business success stories. The invitation came in the mail, addressed to Ethan Cole, founder of Cole Craftworks. Confused but curious, he attended in his only decent suit, holding Leela's small hand as they stepped into the glittering ballroom. Cameras flashed, guests mingled, and the lights dimmed as the event began. When the host announced the keynote speaker, Ethan froze. Walking onto the stage, radiant under the spotlight, was Aurelia Voss, the billionaire philanthropist, the face he had seen on magazine covers, business news, charity events. The woman he thought was just a kind stranger. His heart thudded in disbelief. She stood before the crowd, speaking about compassion, dignity, and the power of seeing value in people others overlook. Then she smiled directly at him and said, "Sometimes the kindest people are the ones who have the least to give, but they give anyway. And sometimes those very people remind us what humanity truly means." The audience turned as she gestured toward him. "Tonight, I want to honor someone who defended a stranger without hesitation, who never let struggle steal his kindness. Please welcome Ethan Cole and his daughter, Leela." The applause roared. Ethan felt tears sting his eyes as he carried Leela to the stage. Aurelia met him halfway, her hand trembling slightly as she held his. "You didn't know who I was," she whispered, "but you saw me as a person. That's why I wanted to help you." He smiled through tears. "You didn't have to. I wanted to," she said softly. "You reminded me that the world still has good men." From that night on, their bond deepened. Aurelia visited his workshop, sometimes helping him design new pieces, sometimes just sitting with Leela as she painted scraps of wood. The world soon noticed. The story of the single dad and the billionaire spread across media platforms as a symbol of kindness rewarded, of hearts connecting beyond wealth or status. Yet, for Ethan and Aurelia, it was never about fame. It was about finding someone who saw their soul before anything else. Months later, in that same cafe where it all began, Ethan stood by the window as morning sunlight poured in. Aurelia walked in wearing her familiar cream coat, smiling as Leela ran up to hug her. They sat together, laughing softly over coffee, the past pain replaced by peace. Ethan reached across the table and said, "You know, you didn't just change my life, you reminded me that kindness still matters." Aurelia smiled. "And you reminded me that love doesn't need a reason." If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to Kindness Journal, because stories like this remind us that compassion can rewrite any life. Before you go, comment below, do you believe kindness can lead people to their destiny? And as the cafe filled again with sunlight and the sound of laughter, Ethan looked at Aurelia and realized, sometimes the greatest wealth in the world is simply being seen, understood, and loved for who you truly are. The end.